Hey there, deep divers, it's Julie B, and today I'm diving into the harrowing second episode of Season 2 of The Last of Us, and the futile cycle of vengeance that has officially begun. Joel's made it out of seemingly impossible, life-threatening situations countless times, but his luck finally ran out in catastrophic fashion as he happened to fall right into the lap of Abby, the very person who's been hunting him down for 5 long years to avenge the murder of her father. As I said in my first deep dive into this season, this show is going to challenge us to feel empathy not only for the characters we've come to know and love, Joel and Ellie, but also for the people Joel hurt, especially Abby. The hero of one person's story can simultaneously be the villain of someone else's story. It's all a matter of perspective, and Joel embodies this moral quandary. Unfortunately, the way that The Last of Us handled the writing of this storyline will pose a problem and make it more difficult for fans to feel empathy for Abby, or to even continue watching the show in some cases. But I would encourage fans not to give up on it just yet. Can the show survive this? I hope so, and without further ado, let's get into it. Episode 2 opens with Abby having a nightmare about the night when her father was murdered. She goes down the hall toward the operating room and encounters herself, warning her not to go in the room because her father is dead. Abby doesn't want to believe it and wants to see for herself, but the other Abby tells her that his brains are on the floor. So, of course, this dream implies that she did indeed go in and see her father dead with his brain on the floor, which traumatized her to the point where she's still having nightmares about it and probably PTSD. The nightmare does generate some empathy for Abby, because it indicates that she was so traumatized that in her nightmare she's actually warning herself not to go look in there. But the problem with the writing of this scene is that we find out through exposition that she saw her father that way. The nightmare would have been much more impactful and would have generated a lot more empathy if we had actually seen her find her father's body. But instead, before we can see that happen, she wakes up from her nightmare, and we get a shot highlighting her eye that once again suggests we need to start looking at the situation from her perspective. This visual of Abby crying in her nightmare and the highlighting of her trauma through encountering her own self, warning her, that was a good start, but it didn't go far enough. Now, on the other hand, if they had shown the visual of Abby crying over her father's body, it would have been a perfect bookend to the episode, starting with this flashback of Abby finding her father dead on the floor, and ending with Ellie crawling over to Joel as he lay dead on the floor, thereby drawing a parallel between the two young women. But unfortunately, the show didn't handle it that way. And since we didn't see it on screen with Abby, it's just not nearly as effective. It's always better to show, not tell, when it comes to storytelling. Using exposition decreases the impact, and this is a big reason why this episode has failed to generate much empathy for Abby among fans of the show. Now, the rest of the episode proceeds with a storm brewing in more ways than one, as a blizzard approaches and Abby's group has found Joel's home in Jackson, Wyoming. Seeing how well fortified the compound is from a distance, Abby's comrades think that killing Joel is an impossible mission at first, but by pure luck, Abby stumbles upon him. Meanwhile, since a growing number of infected have been sighted nearby, the commune sends out two-person patrols to scout around. Ellie actually wants to go with Joel, seeming to have had a change of heart about him after she's treated him coldly for a long time. On the previous night, when Joel had shoved a man who called Ellie a lesbian slur, she had rejected his help in front of the entire town. But after a night's sleep, she seems to realize that she should have appreciated that he was just trying to protect her out of love, as he always does. Unfortunately for her, she realizes her mistake too late. He's already gone on patrol with Dina, and she doesn't get the chance to make peace with him, something she'll certainly regret for the rest of her life. Ellie goes out on patrol with Jesse instead, where they take refuge from the blizzard in an old 7-Eleven full of rotting marijuana. And Ellie finds a firefly necklace with the name Eugene on the back. This belonged to the husband of Gail, Joel's therapist he visited in the Season 2 premiere. Gail confronted him about the fact that he killed her husband Eugene, who we can only assume was infected and had to be put down, so Joel had no choice. Joel has taken many lives over the years, but going to Gale for therapy, as he's been doing for a while, that may have been the first time he had to really confront the consequences of his actions and a person who was hurt by them. And he looks deeply remorseful, his eyes filling with tears as he thinks about the fireflies he killed to save Ellie. In the years after his daughter's death, he, Tommy, and Tess were not good people from what we were told in season 1. They killed people and caused a lot of unnecessary damage. Tommy had joined the Fireflies for a while to try to make amends for this, and Tess had made Joel promise to keep his word and deliver Ellie to the Fireflies so they could make amends as well, kind of clear their karmic debt. Because the Fireflies wanted to use Ellie to try to find a cure for cordyceps and save humanity. But to do that, as Joel found out at the last minute, they planned to murder Ellie, and he couldn't let that happen to this innocent young girl he had embraced as his daughter. But getting back to Ellie finding Eugene's firefly necklace, this may have more significance in a future episode, and we may get a flashback to Joel killing Eugene. I'm guessing that Joel knew Gale's husband Eugene used to be a firefly. I doubt he killed Eugene for no reason. Eugene probably got infected. However, Joel may have exerted undue force or cruelty when he killed him. Just knowing that Eugene was a firefly may have triggered Joel's PTSD, since the fireflies nearly murdered Ellie, and I'm convinced that he has this disorder. The PTSD was probably caused by the loss of his daughter Sarah. Every time he killed people to defend Ellie in season 1, he was in fight or flight mode, a trauma response. He even had a flashback to his daughter's death that triggered him to tackle a soldier and beat him to death in order to save Ellie early on in season 1. From the beginning, Joel couldn't let Ellie go, not after losing his own daughter in such a tragic way. He never got over that grief. So when the Fireflies were holding her captive, his emotion and adrenaline took over, as he had no time to think. He was told that Ellie was about to be killed, and she didn't know about the Fireflies' plan. She wasn't even given a choice in whether to give up her life. And so he murdered 18 people. It wasn't premeditated. It wasn't done in cold blood like what Abby did to him, planning his murder for years. He didn't take pleasure in it with the sadistic bloodlust that Abby displays as she tortures and kills Joel later in this episode. But let's back up a bit now. Despite realizing the challenge she's up against, Abby wanders off by herself and spots 2 people on horseback in the distance. Realizing she has a shot at snaring Joel after all, she pursues them and finds herself surrounded by a horde of frozen, infected creatures who come flying out of the snow and chase her down. And I'm sure there's more than one fan of The Last of Us out there who were actually rooting for the infected at this point. This horde was woken up and drawn in the direction of the compound because cordyceps fungi had made its way inside there, and it communicates with them like a hive mind. In a truly epic scene, this gigantic horde of infected come flying out of the snow and chase Abby. She comes within an inch of her life, climbing a fence and crawling her way through very tight quarters, with the infected grabbing at her until one of them gets her pinned to the ground. And of all the terrible luck for Joel and stunning good fortune for Abby, Joel reaches out a hand and saves her life, whisking her away to safety in a nearby building. But that changes nothing about her diabolical plan she has in store for him. She doesn't care that he saved her life. She convinces him and Dina to come to the lodge where her comrades are, promising they'll help Joel fight the infected attacking his people, and they have plenty of ammo and weapons. Then Joel saves Abby again by getting her out of that area on the back of his horse, just as the infected burst in. She clings onto his waist, knowing full well that she's planning on killing this man who's saving her life. Another reason why the writing of this episode is making it difficult to generate empathy for her. When they arrive at the lodge, Joel can see over the horizon that his commune is under siege, with clouds of smoke up in the air. With a gun to Dina's head, Abby orders him to answer honestly where he was the last time he saw the Fireflies. And he answers honestly, Salt Lake City. Oddly, Abby doesn't ask Joel why he killed her father, and the other fireflies, even though all they have are rumors about Ellie, and if it were me, I'd want to get more answers out of him. He realizes they look like a militaristic group, based on their outfits and the way they're all armed. They definitely don't look like raiders. Dina notices a patch with a wolf on it that says WLF, a militia group that these people have joined in Seattle after the Fireflies had been decimated by Joel. Unlike the Fireflies, who had a hopeful purpose with an uplifting motto, "When you're lost in the darkness, look for the light," and having adopted the Firefly name to represent this spirit of hope, this WLF militia group is clearly a much darker and more cynical enterprise, with a fierce wolf as its symbol. Abby reveals that she was 19 when Joel killed her father, and she's trained with this militia for the past 5 years in preparation for this moment. She shoots him in the leg, a deliberately non-lethal shot, so she can continue to drag out this torture, ordering someone to tourniquet him. She proceeds with this whole long-winded villain monologue trope, and Joel interrupts her with a brief moment of meta levity, telling her to just shut up and get on with it already. She calls him a stupid old man, telling him he doesn't get to rush this, and proceeds to hit him in the leg with a golf club and beat him in the face with all her strength. And she continues doing this for so long that his face is swollen and he seems close to death from his injuries. All of her pent-up rage, fury, and grief are just unleashed at this very moment after holding it in for so long, all these years. And then, as if this scene wasn't brutal enough already, poor Ellie shows up, stumbling into this gruesome affair. The others tackle her, and one holds her down on the floor as she screams and cries for Joel to get up. It's a viscerally gut-wrenching moment for us as the audience. Prior to this moment, Joel had appeared to be beaten senseless, but as Ellie is facing him on the floor, he's clearly looking directly at her and aware of her presence. In a heartbreaking but beautiful moment, because it shows how much Joel loves her, he actually tries to get up for her one more time. His hand moves and he manages to lift his head a few inches off the floor. Like he just wants to save her one more time. In his dying moments, that's still the only thing on his mind. That's his purpose in life. But he's only human and he can't be her savior anymore. As one of Abby's people implores her to just end it, Abby stabs Joel through the neck as Ellie screams in despair. Then, without even a flicker of sympathy on her face for Ellie, she heartlessly looks back at Ellie screaming. It's tragic that not only did Joel have to die in such a cruel manner, but in his last moments what he saw was his beloved daughter Ellie being pinned to the floor, and he was unable to save her this time. Thankfully, they didn't harm Ellie, but he couldn't have known they'd leave her alone. She crawls over to Joel, laces her fingers with his, and rests her face on his face as she cries. It's a heart-wrenching callback to the scene in Season 1 when Joel was gravely wounded. Ellie was caring for him, and she lay next to him with her head on his chest. But this time, he won't be making a miraculous comeback. Also, featured prominently in this shot of Joel by himself, we can see the broken watch on Joel's wrist that his daughter Sarah gave him before she died, and he's worn it every day since. It symbolizes how time stopped for Joel when she died. He's been stuck in this quagmire of grief from which he's never been able to move forward, and he's a broken man inside. Ellie and Joel lay prostrate on the floor together, with this aerial view showing these two fierce characters at their smallest and most vulnerable moment to date. Before Abby's group leaves, Ellie screams at Abby that she's going to kill her, and thus the cycle of vengeance has begun. Abby has set into motion a senseless and futile cycle of violence that didn't need to happen. Yes, you can say that Joel started it by massacring 18 fireflies, but he did so because they were holding Ellie captive and about to murder her. There was a clear and present danger to his innocent surrogate child's life, and he had no time to think about it. He reacted in a natural and understandable way as a father, with pure emotion driving him to save her by any means necessary, including the killing of Marlene, the leader of the Fireflies, because even though he'd already saved Ellie and Marlene put down her weapon, Joel says that Marlene would have just followed them. Ellie wouldn't be safe from that threat. So Joel killed everyone in a fast and painless way. By contrast, there was no danger to Abby's people from Joel or anyone else, and they knew it, especially as time went on and they never saw him again. Abby had vowed to kill Joel, slowly, making him suffer, for pure vengeance alone. There was no constructive motive to it. It doesn't change the fact that her father and the others are dead. Two wrongs don't make a right, and an eye for an eye just makes the whole world blind, if you ask me. Besides, the two situations are entirely different and don't really fit the eye for an eye concept in a way. Yes, it was literally a life for a life, but the circumstances are totally different, as I just explained. One person making a snap decision to quickly kill people for the purpose of saving his daughter from imminent death at their hands, and another person premeditating a cold-blooded and sadistic murder for pure vengeance alone, not to save anyone. Nothing constructive will come out of this at all, only more bloodshed, more damage. This is another huge reason why it's difficult to have as much empathy for Abby as we do for Joel and Ellie. Abby plotted Joel's death for years and then carried out his torture and murder with sadistic pleasure, then walked away looking satisfied. Of course, it all originated from her trauma and grief, but the sadistic manner in which she killed him, a character fans love so much, is going to make it much more difficult to inspire empathy. In my last deep dive, I praised the show for introducing Abby in a sympathetic light, showing us a flashback of her at her father's grave after his murder, looking at the same giraffes that Ellie had encountered with Joel. It began with this close-up shot that highlighted her teary eyes, and I thought, this is a perfect way to begin comparing Abby to Ellie, showing us that we need to start looking at Joel's massacre through Abby's eyes now. Right versus wrong, hero versus villain, it's all a matter of perspective. What Joel did is morally ambiguous, and from Abby's perspective, he's the villain who murdered her father and 17 other people. But the way the show portrayed Abby in episode 2 undermined its own efforts to generate empathy for her. She was too bloodthirsty, and this plotline was way too rushed, in my opinion. The show should have given us more time to build up empathy for Abby. Let us get to know her for more episodes. Give us more flashbacks of her with her dad, and build up to Joel's murder later in the season. I know that they followed the events in the video game almost exactly, but that wasn't necessary. Shows and movies use creative license all the time to deviate from their source material. Instead, they rushed Joel's death and didn't give us enough time to get to know Abby and care about her. Abby came off looking like a sociopath in the process, touching his face and acting like a supervillain while he lay there helpless and wounded. This is a big mistake because Joel was one of only 2 main characters in Season 1, beloved by the fanbase, and it was already going to be an uphill battle to generate any empathy for his murderer. While Abby walked away looking self-satisfied, having gotten the job done, she's still riding high on a wave of adrenaline. When the dust settles, I doubt this vengeance will bring her any peace or assuage her guilt. The hole in her heart from her father's absence will still be there, and it's never going away. And she has no idea what she has just unleashed. Again, the endless cycle of vengeance has begun. Ellie will inevitably be consumed by grief and rage, in the same way that Abby was over her own father's murder. Abby just created another version of herself in this way. Another young woman who will be determined to avenge her father's death, driven by bloodlust to make Abby and her people pay dearly for their actions. Ellie is currently the same age that Abby was when her own father was murdered, 19. She will be a mirror image of Abby now, and in the preview for the next episode, we see her visiting Joel's grave and taking out her rage on a punching bag as she continues her fight training with Jesse. But instead of just training for self-defense purposes, as she's done thus far, I'm sure she's training to go after Abby now. Dina tells her in this preview that she knows who those people were and that the name of the girl who killed Joel is Abby. And just look at the intensity and the rage in the eyes of Ellie here. She's definitely going to be out for bloodthirsty revenge. After the cold and heartless way she treated Joel leading up to his death, Abby will doubtlessly experience a great deal of grief, regret, and self-blame. This will make her even more bloodthirsty, looking for someone to blame and projecting her feelings of guilt onto Abby. Even though Abby literally is the guilty party here, Ellie's thirst for vengeance will be even more intense due to her rage not only at Abby, but at herself because of her own guilt. As Jesse and Dina take Ellie back to the commune, Ellie looks backwards in one final gut-wrenching scene showing her devastation as she looks at Joel's body that's wrapped up and being dragged with a rope tied to Jesse's horse, a haunting image. The preview for episode 3 shows Ellie waking up screaming in a hospital, perhaps after a nightmare about the horrific murder of Joel. No doubt, much like Abby, she'll be afflicted by PTSD as well. And she finds Joel's handgun in a box with his beloved watch from his daughter Sarah. This gun is surely acting as a literal Chekhov's gun. There will be bloodshed on Abby's side, and Ellie will be the aggressor now. But I'm going to stand by what I said in my first deep dive on the Season 2 premiere. Ellie should not go after Abby. What happens if she goes after Abby? Let's say she kills her. In going to war against Abby's militia group, she could lose more of her own loved ones in the process. And Abby's people would certainly want vengeance for Abby's death or the deaths of anyone close to Abby by Ellie's hand. And then Abby's people will want more vengeance on Ellie and her people. Someone has to break this cycle of violence or it will never end, and vengeance is futile. It won't bring back their loved ones. It will only cause more carnage and bloodshed. The best thing that Ellie could do, and without a doubt what Joel would want her to do, is to live her life and try to find whatever happiness she can with Dina and her friends at the commune, to do whatever she can to protect herself, let go of her guilt, and deal with her grief in a healthy way. Just learn how to be happy with the life that she has left. But that's not going to happen. We can all see that coming. Ellie will be out for blood, no question. She'd be better off helping Tommy and Maria to pick up the pieces of what's left of their community after the devastation that they've experienced as well in this episode. Because meanwhile, the horde of infected attack Tommy and Maria's commune, the ones who were summoned there by the hive mind way that the fungi operate, those live fungi that had made their way into the commune unbeknownst to anyone until this episode. Tommy executes their emergency protocols. He sends the elderly, children, and their mothers into underground bunkers, while the rest of the able-bodied people prepare for battle. In a blockbuster action scene that looks straight out of a Michael Bay movie, Tommy orders barrels of flammable liquid to be rolled out of their fortress toward the approaching horde. Then they throw down lighted torches to trigger these massive explosions and decimate as many of the infected as possible. But it's not enough. There are too many infected, an overwhelming number, and accompanied by this bloater, a gigantic behemoth who literally bursts through the wall of the fortress with sheer brute strength. Tommy and the others fight as best they can, ultimately killing all of the invading infected, but the bloater is the hardest one to kill. It's impervious to handgun bullets, and even Tommy's flamethrower doesn't seem to slow him down at first. Just as Tommy's flamethrower is shot and he's helplessly cornered, the bloater finally succumbs to its burns and dies. These creatures are truly formidable when they get to be this size, and it takes much more powerful weapons to kill them. So Tommy and Maria both survive the ordeal, but it's a devastating blow to what had been like a little utopia amid this hellscape that the world has become. Bodies litter the streets all over, many of them infected, but most definitely a high body count of the commune residents as well. They'll be more vulnerable now after losing so many of their able-bodied people, with their weakest residents, the elderly and children, still alive after hiding in bunkers. Some of their buildings were still on fire at the close of the episode, and they'll have a lot of rebuilding to do now. And what's next for The Last of Us as a whole? Well, in terms of the show itself, even though HBO renewed the show for a third season before Season 2 began, on the strength of positive reviews, if there's enough backlash from fans over Joel's death, they could still renege on that plan. There's often a big gap between the way critics judge something and the way fans do. Critics look at it from a more objective perspective and focus on the quality of the show in their eyes, while fans tend to look at it from a more emotional perspective. As much as I want Joel back, like most of you in the fandom, I would urge you to give the show a chance to explain itself, to show us why it killed him off, and look at the big picture, the important messages the show is trying to send us. The show wants us to hate Abby now, just like in the game, and it wants to teach us how damaging hate is through Ellie's forthcoming rage toward Abby, much like Abby's blind rage and hatred toward Joel. It wants to show us how damaging the endless cycle of vengeance is. It solves nothing, only causing an endless chain reaction of additional damage and bloodshed. And it wants to teach us a very difficult lesson in empathy. And let's see if we're up to the challenge. The show wants us to learn to feel empathy for all involved here, to put ourselves in Abby's shoes. If we'd been following Abby and her father for all of season 1, instead of Joel and Ellie, we'd all be on Abby's side right now, I think. And while I believe the show's writing is going to make it more difficult to generate the empathy they're trying to inspire, I still commend both the show and the video game for undertaking this risky move and for the important message it's trying to send. Right now, we're feeling much more empathy for Ellie and Joel after following their emotional journey through season 1, and then watching Ellie scream and cry as Joel is brutally murdered, so it's understandable to be upset. But let's give the show a chance to justify this devastating story. Now I want to know what you think. How do you feel about Joel's death? Do you think he deserved it? Was Abby justified? Do you feel empathy for Abby at all, or just Joel and Ellie? What do you think about the cycle of vengeance that's begun now, with Ellie and Tommy likely to go after Abby's group to avenge Joel's death? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe, and check out my lives for The Last of Us on Monday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern. And until next time, keep on deep diving, and let's see what we can uncover together.